Welcome. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm Dennis van der Heijden. I'm CEO of Convert, and welcome. As you know, the optimization process for agencies is kind of the hardest job. Increasing conversion rates across industries is a tough job. And in this accelerator series for agencies, we try to bring distilled experiences from different pros in 50 minutes for you as testers. And so you're ready to try something different. And this time we have the honor to welcome Tim Zuidgeest. And he will share all about neuromarketing, and specifically EEG, how the subconscious forces make you and your audience convert. And Tim is a consumer psychologist and the co-founder of ST&T Research. He uses EEG to understand the customers and what makes them tick. And he leveraged that in a wide variety of optimization techniques to convert them. And before we start, we have some housekeeping. Around or at maximum 72 hours after this webinar, you'll get this webinar as a recording by email. And as usually, we're going to stay on board after the webinar in the session to answer questions. And the session will then continue on Twitter. So if you please go there and use the hashtag accelerator or agency accelerator at Convert, that would be great. I appreciate that. We'll be able to answer then questions if you use the right hashtag. We'll always give a surprise gift for all the people staying on the Twitter after party. We'll have something in your email on additional things on your marketing that Tim will share to you. So thank you. Without further ado, I present to you Tim. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Dennis. And thank you guys for having me on this webinar. I'm very excited to tell you guys some stuff about what we're doing over here in Holland with neuromarketing. It's an exciting new area that we're exploring right now. So so this is the beginning of my presentation. I always like to show this slide with me with the EEG headset on. It's not mounted properly, of course, because my hair was still, I needed to keep my hair straight. But yeah, I always love this image, of course. And it shows a bit of the clientele that we're working for right now. So yeah. So this first image I wanted to show you is, again, an image of me. This will be the last one, I assure you. But yeah, take a look at this picture. And without turning your own head, could you see what's wrong in this picture? And maybe some people already see it, that some things are off. And without giving everything away, maybe look at the mouth. Is it correct? Is it the way you think it is? What about the eyes? Can you see it? Let me turn the picture for you. So yeah, now you see the eyes and the mouth were turned upside down. And it's really strange that if you see this picture this way, upside down, but now with the eyes and the mouth like you normally see, it's really hard for your brain to see that this isn't the correct picture as it should be. Because if you see everything correctly, like here, without, well, of course, the eyes and the mouth aren't correct at the moment, your brain knows, hey, this isn't right. But at this point, your brain immediately overrides your rational part and sees a good face and says, let's go on. And this is the basic what psychology and neuromarketing does. It's the subconscious that we're trying to persuade, that we're trying to measure as well. And it's a system that goes automatically. It overrides your rational part. And that's really handy to keep in mind, because there's a lot of stuff that happens in that automatic way. And that's the part that we want to influence, or we want to use. And maybe you guys have already seen this next slide, so I'll keep it short. But it has been said, and this is the standard practice for all psychologists, that 95% of all our decisions are made in system 1, in that subconscious autopilot part of your brain, while only 5% is system 2. It's your more rational system. It's in control and it's slow. And you have to think about decisions you make for example, for your mortgage or other bigger decisions. So without further ado, let's dive in. And the first thing I wanted to show you is this one. Because maybe a lot of you guys also do some user testing. And in user testing, you ask your participants what they think about some stuff, maybe your website or maybe a header image. And the question, of course, is what they answer, is that the truth? And to show you a bit that maybe isn't always the case, this psychologist set up an experiment. And he asked the participants to say which one of those two ladies they would like to date with. So the left one or the right one. And as you can see, they are clearly different. And the left one has long hair and the right one has shorter hair and maybe some earrings as well. So the participant in this case says, yeah, I would like to date the lady on the left with the long hair. And like a good illusionist, the research leader puts the cards down and gives them back. But what he does, unnoticed, is he gives the wrong picture back. So instead of the picture that he chose, he gave the picture back that he didn't choose. And now, of course, the big question is how many people notice this? And of course, most of my questions are trick questions, except for this one, because 87% of the participants said like, hey, that's not the one I've chosen. But the interesting part is about the 13% of people that didn't notice it. They didn't notice that the images were swapped. And now they were going to explain like, yeah, why did they choose this picture? And instead of saying, yeah, I like the girl because of the long hair, they said like, yeah, no, because I like girls with short hair and I like when they wear earrings and all that stuff. So they started lying about why they've chosen this picture because they didn't know it anymore. And it's really handy to keep in mind if you're doing user testing, that when somebody doesn't know what they think or how they feel, they will give a reason, because the last thing they want to do is say like, I don't know why I've chosen this. And this happens unconsciously. This is not a conscious decision that they are willing to lie, that's the thing that they want to do. It's just subconsciously they start to make up something. So keep this in mind when you're doing user testing. And also when you're doing user testing, you're sitting next to the participant. And the question is, well, how does that influence your participant? And to tell you, and to give you some more insights in that, let's look at Clever Hans. Clever Hans was a horse. And I think it's a Dutch horse because his name is Hans. And a lot of Dutch people were named Hans back in the time. But Hans could do something very peculiar. He could calculate. He could do math. If you'd ask the horse, what is 2 + 2? He would tap his hoof or his feet 4 times. It's amazing, right? The horse could really calculate, do math. So a lot of people gathered, and they saw that indeed you could ask him all kinds of math questions and he would tap the right answer. And now the question, of course, is, do you believe that this horse really could do math, or was there something else at play? And so did a psychologist. He looked at it and he was like, I'm not sure if that horse can really do math. So what the psychologist did was to put on ear claps, or so he blindfolded the horse, basically. And what then happened is that when they asked the horse the question of how much is 1 + 3, the horse didn't do anything anymore. So now everybody was amazed, like, so how does the horse do it? And it turns out that the horse just looks at the crowd. And the crowd is like, when the question or when the answer should be 4, the crowd is like, 1, no, they're all in suspense. 2, they're still in suspense. 3, still in suspense. And then 4, everybody's like, oh, he tapped 4 times. And now the horse, he sees that everybody is amazed, so he knows he should stop. So the subconscious influence of the whole audience made the horse do stuff that he'd normally not do. So this is also something to keep in mind when you're doing user testing and you're sitting next to your participant. What is your subconscious influence in that participant? Maybe you have some kind of influence in what you expect him to say, and that couldn't be always so handy. And that there is a lot of subconscious things going on is best shown by this next example. As it turned out, when researchers let a scent of chocolate in a bookstore, they saw an uplift in selling of cooking books, and also an uplift in the selling of romantic books. And the uplift in romantic books wasn't that high because the cookbook is more associated with chocolate, while the romantic part of chocolate isn't that much associated with it. But it's still really interesting to see that there are forces around us that guide our behavior. And let us dive into some examples of other forces that you can use to steer somebody's behavior. And it's a lot of conversion insights that I want to share with you. And the first one is an example of Coolblue. This is a Dutch online store, and they have this webpage. And a lot of times I ask the audience, what is missing over here? And there's some crucial information missing. And maybe because you guys are in conversion, you probably heard of this, that leaving out the euro sign or the currency symbol increases conversion. And that is indeed the case most of the times. And it happens because of this. When people see prices, this area in the brain lights up. And the fun thing is, this is exactly the same area as when you hit your thumb with a hammer. It's the area in your brain that also lights up when you have pain, or you're actually in pain. So this makes sense a bit. You know, when we say, when you're spending money, it also hurts a bit. And this is the same thing that we also see in the brains with an fMRI scan. It actually hurts. And spending money isn't hurts, but apparently also seeing the price of an object also hurts. And what always comes with the price is the currency symbol. So one way to feel less pain actually is to leave the currency symbol out. But now dive into something really more in-depth in neuroscience. We just saw this image of television, right, with the price. So let's dive into the price and zoom in on it. So here we have the old price of 1,100 euros 99 and a new price of 1,000 euros 97. And for the next thing that I'm going to change, I have to explain you guys something about how sometimes physical concepts translate themselves to mental concepts. And this sounds a bit vague, but imagine a friend that lives far away. So we have a physical distance between us, and that is kind of big. And you feel also that your emotional distance to him is also a bit bigger because of the distance, right? There's a Dutch expression that says, better a close neighbor than a far friend. And this is the same thing. A mental concept, or a physical concept, living far away, translates into a mental concept. The connection that also feels a bit further away. Now, let's apply this to this price. Maybe you already guessed it. I'm increasing the distance between the old and the new price. And what happens, and this is actually a scientific study that studied this, that when we increase the size between the old price and the new price, also our thought of how big of a discount this is also increases. So this is really interesting. This is, again, the physical concept that translates into a mental concept. And for the next few slides that I'm going to show you are all these scientific researches stacked on top of each other. And we end up with maybe the perfect price of how this mentally works best, or in a psychological way works the best. So there's also a concept called processing fluency. And basically that means that things that we process easier are also processed more fluently. And if it's processed more fluently, we like it better. It's just as simple as that. And what makes a price in this case be processed more easily? Well, let's look at the change first. So instead of making the old price big, I've made it bigger. And this kind of makes sense because the old price is also bigger, right? It's 1199, so it's 120 euros more, so it's bigger. So it also should be bigger in a font wise. So this is again a research that says that if the old price is bigger than the new price, this mentally makes more sense. This is more fluently processed. So this also feels like a bigger discount. And in the next change, in this change, I've made the old price not opaque and the new price more opaque. Same thing, if it's opaque, it feels lighter, and a lighter price feels smaller. And in this change, I've increased the font weight. So the old price is big, it's thick, it's bold, and the new price isn't anymore. And we can go even further. I can lose the dot here as well. And losing the dot basically just means that the price has gotten smaller in a how big it is way. And this is the last one that I want to show you guys for pricing then, at least. That's a red stripe. And apparently this only works for guys. So for guys, this feels like a bigger discount. And for girls, this is neutral. And it probably has something to do with how guys perceive the color red and how that has played a role in evolutionary theories and whatnot. So with all this in mind, we as an agency, we did an A/B test, or an ABCD test in this case. So on the left top corner, we saw the original price on this website. So in that image, it's on the right bottom, we see euro sign 18,00. So we have two things that we want to apply here. The first thing is leaving out the euro sign, as I already told you. And the second thing is leaving out the zeros, because also leaving out the zeros makes the price smaller. So it should be felt as a smaller price, right? So we tested this. And of course, I guess you might agree with me that the one on the right bottom should be the clear winner, because it doesn't have a euro sign and it also doesn't have the two zeros. But strangely enough, the one on the left bottom won. And we were quite amazed by this, because we thought, hey, right, the euro sign, it hurts, so leaving it out should mean less pain, should mean more conversion. But what we forgot is that maybe the fact that it isn't clear that it is a price without the euro sign is a bigger issue than leaving the euro sign away because it hurts. So this is also something to keep in mind when you're trying to apply this psychology insights. It's that basically it's on the top of the pyramid in changing a website, in doing some of a conversion test. Right? Sure, first the basics should be right. And in this case, that is the basic of knowing that it is a price. And to give a bit more insight of that, look at the following picture. And maybe you guys can already tell me from what big retailer this one is. And while I can't hear you guys, and you're not allowed to raise your hands except for a high five, I guess most of you will
right do it. Amazon.
Amazon. Thank you. Thank you, Dennis. Yeah, so this is indeed Amazon. And it's really interesting. You guys, you didn't know, you don't see Amazon as a logo over here. The only thing you've seen is the price and how it's communicated, and maybe the button, right? The add to cart button. And because this is branded so well, Amazon is able to leave out the dollar sign in this case, because you recognize that this is the price, right? $15.71 is the price. So in this case, it makes more sense to leave it out. So when you try to apply the same thing, first look if you've branded your price correctly, if people know that that's the place where the price should be. So this is a next insight that we got from neuromarketing.com. It's basically a website that has the latest info on neuromarketing insights. And this one told about how you should position your products. Also keep this in mind when you position your products maybe on your e-commerce website or on other websites where you have products as well. On the left-hand side, you see the iMac. it's facing towards the text. While on the right-hand side, the laptop of Dell is facing outwards of the text, or of the banner as well. And you could view this as converging lines, basically, and that goes towards the text in the the Apple ad, while in the Dell ad, it's facing away from the text. So we see that the right ad doesn't work as well as the left ad. And they've also, of course, checked the right ad with the laptop on the other way around. So keep in mind that also your products should be facing towards your text. And this is basically the same as you'd use humans in your text. And on the subject of the converging lines, you could use it in your advantage as well. So first, I'm going to ask you guys to look here, and you probably automatically look at the green star here, right? Because the two lines are converging towards that star. And now I'm going to ask Dennis, because he's such a good audience, to look at the next picture and to tell me the first thing that he sees. And I want you guys to also try to do the same. Look at the picture that I'm going to show you right now and just think of the first thing you see. Are you ready? Here goes.
Here we go. I see my Dutch windmill.
Yeah, that's correct. And while I can't hear the rest of you guys, of course, when I give this presentation to a lot of people in the audience, everybody shouts out, I see the windmill first. And that's not that strange, because if you look at the water, the converging lines, which happens automatically with straight roads or lands or waters in this case, automatically direct your attention to the windmill. And the windmill, in turn, is looking towards the text, welcome to Holland. And while one might argue that this is a nice ad of Friesland Campina to welcome people to Holland, they're apparently also trying to sell the products that you see in front of the image. But if you keep in mind that you only have a few seconds of attention when people walk by, you probably want people to first see the product and not the windmill. Maybe you're trying to sell windmills. In that case, this is correct. But in other cases, keep in mind of the effect of converging lines, and it always happens with roads and waters like this. So yeah, the big Cialdini. I hope you guys aren't scared, and not to worry. I won't dive into the Cialdini 6. I won't even dive into the principle scarcity as a single principle. I will dive into a distinction that also recently came out as an interesting insight in the neuromarketing science world. And the distinction in scarcity in this case is that there are basically two kinds of scarcity that you can use. And the first one is probably the one that most of the people use. It's almost sold out. But the second one is also interesting. It's a limited edition. And now think of the difference between these two. On the left one, they almost sold out. You're basically saying there has been produced a lot, but also a lot of people bought it. But on the right side, you're basically saying we don't produce a lot. So you're one of the lucky few that can have it. So the left one is more of a social proof kind of scarcity, while the right one is more of like a unique scarcity. And as it turns out, different kind of people react to those different kinds of uniqueness. The different kind of framing of this scarcity. And as it turns out that when you use the almost sold out, people that are low in their need for uniqueness will react more positively on that kind of persuasion, while people that are high in their need for uniqueness react better to a limited edition kind of framing. And also in your loss of your gain frame, I don't know if you guys all know it, but you can, for instance, say sign up for our newsletter and always receive, which is a gain frame, the last information. Or you could say sign up for a newsletter and don't miss out the latest information, which is more of a loss frame. And apparently people that are high in their need for uniqueness react more positively to a loss frame, while people that are low in their need for uniqueness react better to a gain frame. So keep this in mind when you're using scarcity on your website. For instance, when you have a product that appeals more to people that want to be unique, say for instance a dress that is really colorful, you should probably use the limited edition version and not the almost sold out one. So another thing on social proof that I'd like to tell you guys is the opposite of social proof. And why I want to show you guys this is that the opposite of social proof can be used in the wrong way. And I'm missing a slide over here, so I'll just wing it for now. We tested some propositions for a Dutch insurance company. And we tested it. We tested 3 that we created on our own, and those are the ones on the left. It's fear, social proof, and a reframe. And we also used 2 propositions that were in the market already. One from ABN AMRO, and the other one from Interpolis. And the interesting thing is the one from Interpolis used a negative kind of social proof. What it says was, it was an insurance for cybersecurity, and what it says was, cyber incidents happen all the time, but still most entrepreneurs don't think about it. And what this says is it's the wrong kind of social proof, because you're saying like a lot of people don't worry about this, so you don't have to as well. And we all know the positive side of social proof, saying like, hey, a lot of people do this, but not a lot of people think about the other way around, that the negative one, saying that a lot of people don't worry about this, really hurts conversion as well. And you can see this, how we tested it. We tested this on LinkedIn with advertising. Also interesting to keep in mind that A/B testing doesn't always have to be on your website. If you want to test a proposition, for example, or a USP, you could try to test it on Facebook or on LinkedIn if you want to have entrepreneurs. And we saw indeed that compared to the ones that we created on the left-hand side, the 3, the Interpolis one worked really, really badly. So it didn't work as well as the other ones. So keep in mind the negative part of the social proof. I also want to tell you a bit about what I think is going to be happening in 2018, so a bit more closely. And it's micro movements. And I don't see this around that often. So this is really something that you could up your conversions really easily with. Let's look at maybe the arrow that most of you guys probably use to direct the attention a bit more down. But it also happens with buttons. And you can try to do this as well. On this example, you see the button shaking a bit. And then this example I really love. Look at the green button. And it just shakes. And I feel a bit happy when it shakes like that. So what this micro movement, we see in our eye tracking examples that it attracts a lot of attention because something is moving, and that isn't normally the case on a static website. So this is really useful to attract attention. And now for the part that most of you guys probably were also really curious about, and Dennis introduced me for at the beginning. It's the subconscious that we try to measure with neuromarketing measurements like EEG and eye tracking. And so for us, neuromarketing can be explained in 2 ways. So the first way is what I showed you guys already. That's the insights that we already have from science that has already been done, or research that we already have done. It's like the best practices. But sometimes you really like to know how your consumers react and feel when they watch your website or going through your funnel. Because there could be a lot of subconscious roadblocks that are happening over there that people aren't able to tell you, but still really make a difference in whether or not they're going to convert. And I'm going to give you an example of a case where people probably wouldn't have said that this was stopping them from converting, but eventually ended up having a massive gain in conversions. But to dive into that, I first have to tell you something amazing that has been found in research with EEG in this case. This study from 2014 showed that we could really predict if somebody was going to buy a product or not. By looking at EEG, and in this case, prefrontal asymmetry, you can forget that, of course, we could predict 500 milliseconds before somebody was going to buy a product that he was going to buy it with a certainty of 90%. And this is really amazing. And we do a lot of it with this metric. And I'm going to show you how it looks in a bit. But keep in mind that this is really sort of the thing that you're looking for if you want to know what really attracts attention and lights people on your website. Basically, what we measure is an approach or an avoidance motivation with this. So when we see an approach motivation, we see that people really want it. But when we see an avoidance motivation, we see that people really dislike it. So both are really helpful in your online testing, because for some things you want to know, hey, this attracts a lot of attention, people feel positive about this, let's use this more often. While the other one shows you that people really dislike this. And I'm going to show you an example of that dislike in a bit. So doing the EEG research, it's really important to have the right equipment. And maybe you guys say like, yeah, sure. But you, of course, don't know what the right equipment is and what isn't. And for that, we also looked at science and research papers, because back a few years back, they did a comparative analysis of a lot of headsets out there. And this one that you guys are viewing right now, it turned out to be the best one in commercial use. While, of course, the really the best ones are the ones they use in the hospitals, right? But those have a lot of wires on them, and you can't really move freely. And they're also used because they have a lot of more knobs to measure if you have Parkinson or not. So this one basically is the best for marketing purposes, for which we, of course, want to use it. The other ones that are around there are more like the prosumer ones that can measure if you're meditating or not, which is fun to know, but not really helpful if you're doing neuromarketing research for your website, for example. But it also hurts a bit after 10 minutes. And this one just feels like sort of a sweatband that you have on while working out. And while we're looking at these EEG metrics, there are 4 things basically that we can see, which are validated in science. And that's also really important for us, that this is the agreed upon validated metrics that universities around the world use. So this is not something that we made up or something that we maybe validated ourselves. No, this is the one that uses around the world. And for us, this is really important, but also for our clients, of course. And the first one is the desire metric. It's a prefrontal asymmetry, the example I used at the beginning. Another positive metric is the engagement metric. And you can see we have high engagement and low engagement. And when you have low engagement, it's the same as when you're reading a page on a book, and at the end of the page, you're thinking to yourself, oh, what did I read again? Well, that's when you're really low engaged. And the opposite of that is high engagement. Are you really invested in this? This is a metric that we don't use a lot online. We use it a lot, though, for commercial testing. Because in commercial testing, this really correlates with how good you will remember an ad or a commercial. And the bottom 2 are more negative ones. So the first one is workload. You can imagine what this is. When you're having a really difficult time processing something, your workload is really high. For example, when you're doing a difficult math question. And the other one is confusion. And confusion basically means that something happened that you didn't expect. So this is not the same as frustration, which is good to remember. Because frustration, there are some people that say that we can measure frustration with EEG, while the scientific consensus is that that it isn't really clear what you're measuring when you're trying to measure frustration. So we don't do that. We look at confusion, and combined with the opposite of desire, so when you have an avoidance motivation, combined with confusion, we say like, hey, this is something that's really off and shouldn't happen. And on websites, this is the one that you also be looking for the roadblocks, right? Because if there's confusion, if people don't know what is going on, they will probably leave quicker. So if you combine that with eye tracking, you can see where people are looking at the millisecond and what people are feeling at the same time. And this gives insight for optimizations on websites. And I'm going to show you how this looks for the website, but I first want to show you guys how strong it actually is. And by showing that, I need to show you an ad, because that makes it as clear as possible. And in this ad, we ran a test with 12 women that had children of around 2 years of age. So, and you might be asking, wow, we're doing A/B testing with thousands of participants. Why is that number so low? Well, the reason why it's so low is because there's not a lot of variation if you look at brain reactions, right? So research agrees that when you have 10 participants, you can already be certain of 95% that the things that you're finding are significant for a bigger audience. If we really want to be sure, we use 30 participants, because then we get at a significance level of 99%, right? So let me first show you the first scene in this commercial from Letitia. And you're always seeing this baby that's been pulled underwater. And a lot of times when I try to explain to people without showing you this, they say like, oh, so a baby is pulled underwater? That can't be right. But if you look at it in this way, well, maybe you think, yeah, it looks cute, right? So I will play the clip. It's just a few seconds. You probably can see it. He looks happy. Let's look at another clip as well. This clip. This baby looks really happy. It's like the poster boy baby for a commercial, right? And the last scene that I want to show you is this scene. It's a baby in front of a bicycle. Typical Dutch, apparently. We all ride bicycles. We have more bicycles in the Netherlands than we have inhabitants in the Netherlands. So we like to drive on the bike. So these are all commercials that on first hand, one would say, sure thing, they all look good, right? A bit. So let me show you how this looks in the brain. And this is the aggregated data of 12 participants, 12 women that have children of around 2 years of age. And you're looking here at the EEG graph of the desire metric. So that's the one that I pulled out, because you see a lot of spikes over here that give rise to what is happening. And you have to look at the 0 line, right? So the 0 line is over here. I'm pointing at it with my mouse right now. So at the beginning of the commercial, it's really low. Let's take a quick look. You'll see a bar going from left to right. You saw it? So basically what it means that if it's below 0, this means there's an avoidance motivation. While rationally say like, this is cute, this is a baby that's on the water, subconsciously they feel something is wrong. It's not going well. We should abort mission right now. So this is not good. This is not a good start of your advertisement. The next one is the poster boy baby. And he's sitting in the sink. Let's look at it. And you saw when he was in the sink, it immediately jumped really high. So this is really positive. People feel like this is great. And in the next scene that I want to show you, it starts over here. So we have a peak over here, but then a huge drop over here. And it's exactly when the baby is sitting in front of the bike with his mom. So this looks really fun, but what people really felt is scare or anxiety, because the baby is sitting in front of the bike and he's probably a bit in danger, right? Because he's not wearing a helmet as well, but when they collide, he's the first one that hits something, and that's not good. And we see immediately that all the moms that saw this, they dropped in a positive emotion. They were immediately, this is not good, we should abort mission again. So also not a great scene. Here in the last scene, and this is, I think, the best thing to show you guys of how well the asymmetry works, actually, the desire metric, is in this last scene. Let's first look at it, because you can see that there's a huge peak at the end. Well, you can imagine what happened here, right? So you saw the baby is coming up, and the moms immediately think like, this is a cute baby. I want to have him. I want to sniff him probably as well. and they were really happy seeing this. And the reason why I showed you guys this is because of that, the metric that we use, right? The prefrontal asymmetry. And you can see it really works. You can see the distinction of what happens in the brain and what you're seeing in the ad. And this is the best example, of course, that the huge drop in the prefrontal asymmetry in the positive desire, it immediately drops below 0. So people were avoidant here. And so we use this metric also online. And now it gets interesting, because what happens if you see the same dip in positive emotions when people are visiting your website? And this is exactly what we saw in a form. So over here, I have an example of a form that has a lot of non-optional fields, right? So all these fields are obligatory. And we saw with a lot of participants that forgot to fill out these fields, that when they viewed the error message, we saw a dip in the positive emotion. So we saw that people were avoidant in this way. And if we dive into this, it maybe makes a bit of sense as well, because you're seeing that you're missing something here. But if you look further than that, we can also see that it's in red. And I think that most of you guys, when you're looking at a form, also use this color. You use a red color because this is basically the standard of using an error message. So what we thought of that was that red maybe has the wrong association. Maybe red is seen as permanently wrong and not adjustable anymore. While in this case, it's just a notification saying like, hey, you can fill it in, and you haven't made a mistake. So in the following A/B test, we changed the color to orange, and the line that was filled, we changed it from red to black. And it's really interesting because a lot of times when people say like, oh, you do A/B testing, so you're changing colors and stuff, and you guys all know that it isn't anything always about colors. It's much more about positioning elements and psychology that you can use. And maybe when you're testing colors, it's because of a button that you're trying to change a more contrasting color, which makes sense, of course. But in this case, we only changed the color of the text that had an association with it. And now the question is, of course, what did this do in the case of the conversions? And it's really interesting because we saw a huge lift. We saw a lift of 15% with a certainty of 99%, just by changing the color, right? So this is a huge thing for us as well, because as I showed you guys before, we can see in EEG that, of course, there's a dip and there are highs when you also expect it maybe. But we also so now validated it online in a following A/B test on our research. And that gives way for the research that we do a lot of the times. So how we use EEG and eye tracking to optimize websites, because this was just an example, of course. And we do it in this example with a mobile phone. So you can see over here the participant's own phone. We use an EEG glasses, eye tracking glasses from Tobii to look at where people are looking. And over here you can see the EEG state, the brain data. So the top one is the engagement. The green one is distraction. So when there's a peak in distraction, something happens that we don't understand. This one, the blue line, is workload. So how difficult we think this is. Basically, the benchmark is if it's above 80, we think it's difficult. If it's below 80, it's okay. And the bottom line is the prefrontal asymmetry, the desire metric. So when there are dips over here and over here, something is happening. And we're not going to dive into this right now, but you can see over here what is happening, right? So you can see the participants reading the text, and it's really clear what they're reading at the time, and they're visiting the website. And something that we got out of this, really made us think, because we get a lot of insights on how you should or what you should test on your website. We see that basically there are two ways of using EEG and neuromarketing. So the first one is more in an exploratory way. So you can use it to see like, what should I test? What are some subconscious roadblocks that are happening right now that I'm not aware of, like the red text in your form, but also, of course, a lot of other elements. But what's interesting to look at is also more long-term approach of what you're finding. And in this case, we saw for the Dutch road guard that the first two USPs, which are in Dutch, so I'll translate it for you guys. So the first one is the road guard membership, and the second one is advice when you're in doubt with your car. When all the participants viewed this, they weren't really excited. So by all the other USPs, we saw excitement, we saw the people liked it, but with these two, we didn't see it. And this gives an interesting insight for the road guard, for them to look at if this membership is still as relevant as it was when they began with it. Because back in the days, this was really relevant. There's no doubt about it. But nowadays, maybe you could say that participants, don't want to be part per se of the road guard anymore. And I'm not saying that you should change your whole business model only because of this, but this gives rise to a question you should be asking yourself that could have a huge impact. And that is also what I want to show you guys, our model for a continuous customer insights. Because not a lot of times it's only about the short-term impact that you guys have. It's also about the long-term impact. And you can apply the same model actually for your A/B testing as well. Yeah, because the insights you get are really the insights that are validated, right? Because you have a lot of significance. While a lot of other tests that people might run or are thought of, or like the USPs, people make them up and they just go with it. While the tests that you guys run really make an impact down the lines in sales. So what we always start with is the customer. So the customer, we take it central in doing our research, and we ask ourselves, how can we improve our website? And we do that a lot of times with neuromarketing insight. So for instance, when we are an exploratory way, we look at the website and we say, are there some roadblocks going on in the website right now? And we measure it with EEG. We measure the subconscious and we see what people are feeling at the time. And by this, as in the example with the road guard, we can learn that maybe the membership isn't as important as we thought it was. And this gives rise to improve the website on the short term, but also give more insights in your customer. And your customer, that's the one that you want to, you have him, of course, but you also want to have him in the future. So you want to have it more future-proof. So really think about this as building a database of insights about your customer that not only work only now on your website, but it will also work for your advertisements or your other copy that you're sending out via email. So I'm seeing I'm a bit short in time, so I'll go through this because a bit more quickly. But this is also interesting if you want to maybe test your hero images. And we tested that for the road guard as well, because they couldn't really measure through down the line what the impact of these images were. So we have a header over here, and I've now overlaid it with the eye tracking data. But we also combined it with EEG, which we're going to look at in a sec. When you're already sitting over here, that a lot of people looked at the text over here, which is good, and not a lot of people looked at the people on the right-hand side. And I think that is good because, because of course we know that people can be conversion killers because they attract a lot of attention and they divert it away from what we really want them to look at. So in this case, this could be a good header. And this is also what we saw in the EEG metrics. So from a desire point of view, from the approach motivation, we saw that that last header you just saw was the clear winner. While cheap tickets was really negatively. So people didn't view this as well as the other headers. And you might ask yourselves, okay, so how does that header look like? It looks like this. And this is interesting, but because for cheap tickets, they sell this space to their flight guys, right? So to American airlines and stuff. So they sell this spot, and probably for a lot of money, but people view this negatively at this time. So that's interesting to think of. But it's also interesting to think of if you really need an image. And this is something that I really like. We have to question our assumptions, because when we make a website, we automatically think, yeah, there should be an image over there. We need to make people feel some stuff. And that should also be the case, for example, Airbnb, right? You might agree with me that Airbnb, they want to inspire people of where you can go, and they need to have some inspiring images on their website. But if you go to the website right now, you'll see this. There's no hero image at all. And I'm sorry, guys, this is in Dutch. I couldn't get it in English because I tried it with a VPN on an American server, but apparently it works with your browser settings and language. And okay, so it's in Dutch, but you can see the point that I'm trying to make. They don't have an hero image. And I really like this because they question the assumption that you should use an image on your home screen, while you might argue that we're more interested in letting people read the USP. So in this case, for Airbnb, they say like reserve unique spaces, and feel the image, feel the city like you're living there yourself. Experience the city like you're living there yourself. And I also like this part because they're really concrete on what you're getting, while they are actually a really big known and known brand. So also, when you're making hero images or just slogans, make sure that you're really clear about what you're selling and don't try to be vague, right? Because vagueness doesn't sell. And if you look at this, our approach to how we measure stuff and how we use neuromarketing to gain more insights, I hope that you guys also feel that with the A/B testing that you guys are doing right now, you could also set up a database of insights about your customer. And one platform that I really like is Effective Experiments, where you can store all your tests and all your insights about your customer. And you should really have that. And you should attract more cases in there. So not only the A/B testing, but also maybe the testing that we did, like the proposition test that we ran on LinkedIn, which you can also use, of course, on Facebook. But you can also use the EEG data, like we did, to measure some insights or to get some insights on your consumer. So how can you use neuromarketing and EEG? Because that's, I hope, what you guys are thinking right now. Like, where is the place in your A/B testing and how you should use it? So on the first hand, you can use it in an exploratory way, right? If you're thinking, okay, I'm curious what the unconscious mind is thinking of our website, of our funnel, for example. So in the case of the Dutch Road Guard, we asked participants to buy one of the memberships that they offer. And we can see from the beginning to the end what they are seeing at the moment and how they're feeling. And this is really different from other kinds of user testing or just eye tracking, because with just eye tracking, you can see what people are looking at and what they're missing, but you don't see how they feel when they are seeing something, like, for example, the USP. And we also saw in some other tests that we did that people were really positive about the USPs in the EEG, in the brain data that we saw, but they weren't positive in what they said. They said, like, yeah, the USPs don't translate as well to me as something else. So we saw a difference in what people said and what people did. And this is also good to keep in mind, like the same with Clever Hands and the example of the image where they could choose a woman and they saw the strange one. People don't always know what they feel. So it's scary to base your decisions based on what people say. But something that we also see with agencies is that they have a lot of A/B tests that are stacked up already and they don't need new tests. But what we know is that out of 10, or sorry, 2 or 3 out of 10 tests are positively significant, and the rest just aren't. And we see that when we combine neuromarketing insights and research with those A/B tests that are stacked up, that we can increase your tests that are positively significant, because we can judge which tests you should run and which aren't as important as you thought it were. Because we can see in the brain data which tests or which parts actually really hurt on your website are roadblocks. But you can also use it, of course, when something in your funnel is below benchmark, right? So in the case of the personal details, where people forgot some details, we saw also on that page that there was a lot of dropout, more than we expect from our benchmark. And the same as the funnel leakage, right? You see that people are dropping out of your funnel, but you get the feeling that this is more than you would expect normally, right? Or maybe it's untestable, like the header image. It's practically impossible sometimes to look what a header image at the beginning of your funnel does in your funnel down the line. And you can really test this with the EEG. So I hope you guys enjoyed my small presentation about neuromarketing insights. And if you enjoyed it, please add me on LinkedIn, because I share a lot of knowledge over there, and I really like to connect with you on that platform. But also, if you're really curious on how neuromarketing and EEG could work for you, you can schedule a demo with me where I can show you a bit more on how this really works. And don't be afraid if you're not from the Netherlands, because we have an alliance of neuromarketing agencies all around the world. So if it's really specific for American people, for example, we can also test your website on that for that audience, because sometimes it matters, of course, what kind of audience you have. So thank you guys for your attention, and I will give the word back to Dennis.
Well, thank you for doing the webinar, Tim. I really appreciate it. We prepared well, so I saw this, but today I learned a lot more than on the prep. So I really enjoy that. Something that I want to say, if you want to continue and have some questions on today's webinar, at the bottom of our screen here, you'll find the hashtag, which is Agency Accelerator. You could use that, or the @ Convert in Twitter. If you have some additional questions, and I'm sure there will be, we'll send you something nice after the webinar when you go on Twitter for all the ones that participate. If you'd like to, of course, have a demo with Tim, feel free. If you missed the contact information, look at the recording that you get. You can also reach out to us on Twitter if you want to get in contact with Tim, #Convert, or email us, whatever we can do to bring you in contact to move your agency forward and accelerate that. If you would like to try Convert and you have not yet done that, feel free to do that on Convert.com/free trial, or go to the homepage where you can click the button. It's 15 days free, no credit card required. And you can also do some testing. I feel now a lot more basic than you, Tim, but we cannot distribute headsets to all the world at the moment. We have to stick with A/B testing on our side. I really appreciate you doing this demo and presentation. I've never seen something so detailed, combined heat maps and EEGs. And if anybody has questions, please, let's move to Twitter right now, where Tim and I will be ready answering your questions. Tim, thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for having me. And I'm really looking forward to talking to you guys on Twitter. So let's use that hashtag and talk to you over there.
Perfect. Let's go there. And thank you for joining us on today's webinar. Next month, we have another one on the Agency Accelerator, and we'll make sure you get the emails for that. For now, thank you very much and have a great day. Bye-bye.